Okay, so in the last video we saw two different ways of drawing a spiral. This one stopped pretty early on. It just drew four different things for us. Because what did we do? Well, here we pass the buck to the next function, square one. And then here we pass the buck again. And then we pass the buck again. But then, look, the buck stops here, right? It stops here because we return without without calling any other functions here. Okay. But here we pass the buck. But where does the buck stop? We need to have a way to make it stop. Well, let's see what's going on. Now we made this change so that n gets a little bit bigger every time we make this call. So just like here when we pass it on to square one with a little bit bigger n, and then square two gets a bigger n. Here, square one gets a little bit bigger n each time, right? So when we say, let's copy this guy and say, see what n is each time. And here, we just keep calling the same function, square, repeatedly each time. Let's see, this shell is looking kind of messy, so I'm going to kill it and just start up another one. Here, I'm going to open up a shell. And let's run this guy just to see the print statements in here, just to make sure we're clear on what's happening. So here we just keep calling square again, but it gets bigger and bigger and bigger because we're adding 10 each time to the end, so that's kind of cool. And we need to actually do a, I'm trying to make this smaller here. How do I do that? Okay. We need to actually do the Control C to stop this guy. So this got pretty big. This got up to 560, right? So how do we stop this guy? Well, we know that a return statement, we could put a return statement any place here, and the program will go no further. So if I just said return right here, kill this guy, what happens? I'm going to do a new shell again here. So if we just stick in a return right here, what happens? Let's see. It does the first, well, let's see, no, it does that statement too. So it does this print statement, it does this forward and this right, but then it hits the return. That means it leaves the function right away, so it doesn't even try to do this. Okay. Well, that's stopping the buck, but then we're not drawing anything interesting. So what else could we do? Well, one thing we could do is we could just check to see what the value of n is, because n keeps getting bigger and bigger. We can say, well, if n gets too big, then just return, don't do anymore. So let's say if n is bigger than 100, just return. Don't do anymore. Okay, so that way, oops, the buck stops here. This is where we're stopping the passing the buck. Okay. So let's run that and see what happens. And look at that. As soon as we got to n bigger than 100, we just stopped drawing. So that's a core idea of recursion. You need to have a piece of code that you keep on passing the buck and doing something similar. But see, we can make slight changes like this each time. And you can pass the buck. And then, but you also need this piece here where the buck stops. Okay. So, this is one, example of recursion. You can play around with this. You might want to try what happens if we say turn right 93. Run that and see what that looks like. Okay, so it's a little bit different. Or let's say n has to be bigger than 100, but just make this equal to 1. We saw that did some kind of cool stuff. What happens there? Okay, so you see how the square gets kind of bent each time a little bit. But it makes this kind of cool curve thing here. So you can play around, make different patterns, try doing a triangle and then futzing with the triangle a little bit, or 180 or something like that. Play around with those. And you can make some cool designs. But that's some basic stuff about recursion that's important. And then in the next video we'll bring up another important recursion idea.